Hello, everybody. So this is Tim Grittani. He essentially asked me to do a podcast with him. So we're going to kind of just go over everything that he has questions-wise, and I have no idea what I'm prepared for. I don't think he does either, and we'll just kind of go from there and have some fun with this. So
Yeah,
it's nice to see you again, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to talk crypto with me and answer a bunch of my noob questions.
Yeah, of course.
I guess, a little background as to why I was even thinking about this. I mean, obviously, I've known about crypto for years, especially back when Bitcoin went to 19K. Back then, I remember you cluing me into crypto when Bitcoin was around 1,000. I think you brought it up to me in a private message on Twitter or something. And it was around a time where I was feeling kind of burned out on trading as it was. So I was like, okay, the last thing I need is something that trades 24/7. So I just decided to stay away and then watched you and Nate and other people trading these ridiculous runners. But there was so much going on with listed stocks too and the low float trash names that were putting out Bitcoin PRs that I stayed plenty busy. And then, bubble burst and I was just, kind of forgot about it. And lately I've been thinking more about it because with all this COVID stuff and with the Fed, it seems like they're just printing money to try to get out of the problem. And, I'm not a macro guy by any means, but, I follow a lot of people who I respect and I think know more than me. And it seems like everyone seems to think there's going to be an inflationary impact. Yes. And I don't want to just be a dinosaur holding only gold, but I also realize now that I've completely ignored crypto for years. I know nothing about it. I don't really understand the theory behind it, why people even like it beyond it being a cool trading vehicle. So
yeah,
you seem like a great guy to talk to, and maybe I can just the questions for you.
That kind of leads me into, I guess I'll give you my story on it.
Yeah, you did.
So I remember the whole beans thing. So if you look at it, there's also a movie that has it, is B.E. Beans. So it was back in 2000, 1999, I think it was, where they had this internet currency that they were trying to start. And, there was millions of dollars that was put in it because you could transfer beans to people, which is, internet currency. Somebody figured out how to copy them, and it basically all went bust. And so I kind of had that in the back of my head as, just something that happened. And I think it was 2010, and I was on, I think it was probably Reddit or something like that, found this thing called Bitcoin.org. I was like, what is this? This is that internet currency thing going on again. I remember seeing it. It was somewhere in around 50 some odd cents, 10 cents. I can't remember the exact amount, but I remember going to the website, seeing what it was, and I said to myself, this is stupid. It's dumb. And I forgot about it for probably 3 years. And the first time I got interested again was back in 2014. So it made this run from $100 to 1,000. And even before that, on this Bitcoin chart, it went to 50 to 200 in a matter of one day, and then right back to 50. So, and it was on some obscure, I don't even think those websites exist anymore that have the charts. So I was like, well, okay, if somebody's paying $200 for this thing, what is it? But buying these things was almost impossible. I still have an old email of a guy that I tried to buy. I think it was $500 worth, because I was really curious back when it was $50, and you had to do it through PayPal. You had to set up and download this weird wallet from Bitcoin.org, and it was just oh my God, this is crazy stuff. And then you had to deal with public and private keys. So I'll go into that a little bit more. But when that run happened to 1,000, I can remember vividly saying, this is interesting, but there's no real way to buy it. It was through local Bitcoins, and then there was the story of Mt. Gox. Do you know what that is or no?
I don't.
So Mt. Gox, I think it was originally a trading card website. And, there's some great stories about what actually happened. There's even a lot of it's speculation, but essentially it was the one place that you could buy and sell Bitcoin, was mt.gox. I never signed up for it. I know that, you know him, Tim Bowen. Yeah. I remember he mentioned that he signed up for it and he lost whatever he put in there. Probably not a whole lot, but the founders, or so the speculation goes, is that they took the money, took all the Bitcoins, and they just took off. And, there was the whole Fed investigation. There was the federal agent that got involved with it, and he ended up turning south, and then they caught him, and he went to prison. So it's a big, long story about this stuff as far as, you can go on. It's the rabbit hole. But the first time I actually bought any physical, actually it's not physical, but the first time I actually bought Bitcoin was, and I still have the tweet up, back in 2015. I think it was like $248 or something like that. I have the email from Coinbase because they were the only ones that I could find that I could buy this, and just, U.S. regulated. I wanted to feel safe with anything that I had that was money wise. So,
And were you buying it like as a quick flip type idea, or?
I bought it because I was curious about it. Like, I was like, okay, what is this? It just went from, I watched it go to $1,000, and I was like, this is kind of ridiculous. I remember the CNBC stories. But at that point, I had really started getting a lot into trading, like every day. Looked at the chart one day, and I said, this looks like it's a dead bottom pattern, from what I know as far as stocks. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to just buy some, forget about it, see what happens. I remember that I transferred it and I played around with it because I wanted to see, how does it move? How do I send a Bitcoin to you, to my friend? How does this actually work? So I ended up sending half of it to like one obscure other website, forgot about it until it was, I think it was $16,000. So that was a weird thing to log into an account, to have like 10 grand just sitting there, totally forgotten about, off of $200 tiny little investment that I transferred over a couple $100. But as far as the technical aspect of what it is, that's debatable. But Bitcoin itself, I think the easiest way to explain this to somebody, and I've changed this over the years, is think of it as Bitcoin is, so Excel, right? Simple spreadsheet program. Think of what Bitcoin is just an Excel spreadsheet, limited in how many rows that it has as far as how many coins it has, and it's a data set. So one Bitcoin to me is like a data set on a world spreadsheet on, millions of computers that are around there. So every 10 minutes when people transfer these things, that spreadsheet gets updated. So it's just a public spreadsheet, or if you can imagine it even simpler, imagine like a rock or a stone that they chiseled into in the ancient times. One was transferred from A to B, and it's just a record of all that information. That's all it really is. Okay. And over the course of time, it's evolved to me as a political hedge. Who's in charge? What are they going to do with monetary policy? That type of stuff. And it still trades very wildly, but it's still so abstract to many people that it's hard to say in one sentence what it is. But
right.
The trading aspect of it.
There is like a set number of like Bitcoin in existence, right?
So like yesterday, and I guess this is kind of the technical thing, and I'm not going to claim that I know everything about this, because then I know everybody's going to be like, oh, he thinks he knows everything, where I'm like, hell no. But as you can see, there's only 21 million that can exist. So circulating, there's already 18 million out there, which is quite a bit. I think there's some sort of stat out there that like 15% of all Bitcoins are already lost, gone, in existence on hard drives that are sitting in dumps, somewhere, sitting, they can't be touched. 20% is sitting in the creator's wallet, which hasn't been touched. So the essential circulating supply that's out there, the float is actually a lot lower. So, there's a lot of claims that billionaires have control of it, and like, okay, if that's the case, who cares?
Right. Yeah.
Especially if you're just going to treat it as a trading vehicle versus, something that you buy and store on a, and we can get into that too, a secure wallet that, isn't able to be hacked because it's not on the internet itself, like an exchange would be. We can go over that too. But if you're going to buy it just to have it, to hold it, never buy it on these massive run-ups. Always wait till nobody cares about it. Like back in the 3,400 area when nobody wants it, that's when you might buy like one or two or whatever anybody can afford, and just store it. Forget about it. Because it's kind of interesting that in 5 years, something might, 20x its value versus gold, which is kind of bopping along doing what, 16 to 1900 this year, I think it was.
Well, sorry, let me go back to something really quick.
That already brought up. So you interject if you have questions, because I could just talk.
Yeah, I'll interrupt you a lot. Okay. So you said somewhere like lost on hard drives. So like it actually is something that can be like localized to a single computer. Like it's not just like it's somewhere on the internet, you can access it anytime, anywhere. Like it can actually be like to the point where it's on a hard drive and it's just gone if that hard drive is lost.
That's a good question. So no, because all that was on that hard drive was what's called a private key. So how it works is there's a public key, which is an address. So if you give me, and the address you can share, which is like, let me see if we can just find a good example of so a Bitcoin address is essentially a hash of letters, numbers, strings of digits. Let me see if I can just find one. Go to a block explorer. That'll make a little bit more sense. So like this is an address. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you can go to, when you sign up for like Coinbase, or if you go to blockchain.com or any of these public ones, you can create a wallet. All that does is create a new unique address, which is this hash of characters, and it generates a private key. So the only thing you need to move a Bitcoin from your address is to input the private key. And when you do that, it's sent, it's gone, and you can't get it back. As soon as it starts to confirm, gets confirmed on, the mining, which if you have a question on that, I'll answer that too. But all it is that when that person had these Bitcoins on their hard drive, all they had was their private key that they threw away. So they stored their secure information on a hard drive, and then they got rid of the computer. Okay. But when they realized they had all these Bitcoins in this address, they're like, let me go to the dump and see if I can find this. And there's a cool article about it. I think it was like 2017 or something like that, where this guy had $30 million worth, he said, on a hard drive somewhere in the dump, and I think it was the UK or something like that.
Wow. So you said there's 21 million in existence.
Yeah.
And who decided that? Just like whoever created Bitcoin in the first place?
Yeah. So the guy, well, that's a weird one in and of itself, is the creator or creators.
It's like a secret, right? Like it's like a secret identity or something?
Yeah. Some people think it's a consortium of people that are like, just like a group of people that are really smart. Some people think it's a guy that passed away. What was his name? Well, let me see if I can find it really fast. It's his Twitter name is Halving, but I can't remember his name just off the top of my head. But he was a coder that essentially they think created it, or was one of the creators of it. Because there's some interesting backstory about when it came out. The Satoshi Nakamoto email address was active up until a certain date, and then it was just gone. Because I think if he or they knew that they could be identified at any point, it could, take away as part of what the actual value of Bitcoin is this publicly shared database of just things moving across the internet that can't be hacked or deleted or changed currently. So, and that's to me where it gets its value, is that it's very simple information that just can't be hacked. So it's like currently an unhackable database, unless there's quantum computers that are able to
get there, right?
Yeah, to crack the security and all that.
But the 21 million is like locked in, like that can't change. Like I can't help but like compare it to like a stock in my mind, like like outstanding shares and dilution and stuff like that. Like the 21 million is like a done deal.
That's it, done. Can't be changed. So
you said like 18 million in circulation.
18 million currently, yeah.
And the ones that aren't in circulation, the ones that haven't been mined yet.
Correct. And it's an interesting date that we're doing this, because yesterday I guess we kind of have to go into like the mining aspect.
Yeah, please tell me about mining.
So, and again, I'm not the genius of this, but I just know enough information I think I can explain it, is that there's an algorithm, maybe it's not an algorithm, but it's called SHA-256. So it's a security language. I'm going to blow that up probably, but think of it as just a computer language, which I won't fully understand, but it increases its difficulty in the math problem that it takes to solve a specific block. So every time a new block gets, let me restart. So wish I could draw on like a screen. Actually, I can. Here, let me pull up can you see the paint program that I have up here?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is going to be crude, but we're going to do this. So every 10 minutes, there is a block. And every time that somebody sends transactions, so like if I send you a Bitcoin or anybody else, all that gets shoved into one 10-minute time frame. Okay. And there's essentially a magic solving equation for this SHA-256 program that it runs off of. And this is the part where I'm even hazy on. I just understand it. Is that miners essentially are all trying to solve the same math problem in that 10-minute window. If that makes sense.
Then is it like whoever gets it fastest, or?
Basically, yeah. So whoever solves it, and that's why miners, which are essentially just computers sitting in warehouses. And so if you recently watched the Billions episode that just came out, hopefully you did, because I still love that show. Yeah. But it's just a row of computers that just sit there and they try to solve math problems. So the winner of whoever solves that problem first gets, as of 2 days ago, 12.5 Bitcoins. So the interesting thing that happened, so you can see why people mine these things is, 12.5 Bitcoins right now is what?
Like even current valuation, yeah.
You're getting 12 grand. Is that right? No. What is the math on that?
Like 96K or something like that, or 100K.
Yeah, so basically 100 grand for every solved block. And then as of yesterday, that just got halved, which happens, I believe, every 4 years. So now it's only 6.25 Bitcoins. So that in and of itself creates an interesting problem and an interesting benefit to the blockchain itself. So let me go to Coin Wars. So this is the only one that I really know of or look at, is the profitability. So if you're a guy who's got 500 of these computers that are running this program trying to solve this math problem, and all of a sudden that math problem spits out less rewards, is it necessarily going to be profitable for me to continue doing what I do?
Because of like the cost of the energy and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, because the cost of the energy, essentially everybody's reward just got cut in half, if you think about it.
Right, yeah.
So that is going to cause interesting dynamics to what people do. Some people might turn off their equipment, which is shown right here, which is essentially the hash rate. So how powerful everybody is that's working on this network to solve this problem.
Wow.
So to me, and this was a lot of things that I debated during this run-up, was what makes this thing so much more valuable? What was, other market conditions that maybe started this run? And to me, it was the improvement of computer graphics cards. So you had all these people that, and I think at the time it was NVIDIA, that, go back to a yearly chart because I think it's relevant, was that the technology got good enough that if I went and, took my gaming computer, or I went and bought these, which people did, bought these graphics cards that could solve this problem actually at a pretty reasonable rate, that if I spent, $500 on a graphics card, I could pay off a graphics card if I just let it run with my house electricity and I get block rewards. Or if I join a mining pool, you get your shares of the rewards if the pool gets it. And I think that was one of the biggest things that started the 2016, 2017 run, because people could join the network as far as helping transactions. So looking back, obviously hindsight's 2020, I would have loved to buy NVIDIA stock because, not knowing that it's just something to be prepared for when, graphics cards maybe get better, which, led me to one of my best trades, which was AMD in 2018, 2019. But I don't really need to go into that. But anyways, let me go back to...
So once all 21 million Bitcoin are mined and out there, like that's the end of Bitcoin mining, right?
And then who knows what happens? I don't. It's kind of an interesting dilemma question. Like what I think the computers will still need to, the miners will still run. They'll get a cut of every transaction, but will the supply, will the dynamics hold over time? Will mining, power, mining ability, increase proportionate to what the value is? So like over time, does technology grow enough that the price is going to hold up, to these current levels or even higher to make it worth it to just mine? And that to me is, the mining was always everything. Like I could watch, even trading it during 2017, I could watch the hash rate change on a daily basis to see if there would be, dips or rallies, which was a really interesting dynamic to me as far as like, especially after it hit like 5K, I could see a bunch of miners go offline. There's a really weird, interesting thing, and you could see where hash rates would change to. Like one of the most interesting trades as far as that point was Bitcoin Cash. And I'll explain this part too. So have you ever heard of what Bitcoin Cash is or no?
I've heard of it. I have no idea what it is.
So what happened, this was, if you note the date as far as, when this rallied and when the bubble burst and all that stuff, there was just Bitcoin and that was it. But if you're wealthy enough and you have enough mining power and machinery, the way that Bitcoin works is that if you're in control of more than 51% of the, a little fuzzy on this, if you're at least at 51% of whatever the total hash rate is, you can essentially change the blockchain. So you probably read that there's been like attacks on different chains and all that, where I could rent out hash power to manipulate a chain and say, you could change what actually happens. Not live per se, but even when I look into that, I'm like, okay. But Bitcoin Cash came about because of a guy named Roger Ver essentially wanted to change or keep the same what Bitcoin's intent was, to be electronic cash. I want to send my Bitcoin to you and I want it to happen relatively fast and I don't have to worry about it. So during the crazy run up, Bitcoin it took like an hour sometimes for it to send instead of 10, 15 minutes. So he, as far as my understanding, he took what he had and he took the people that agreed with him to split the blockchain from Bitcoin into two chains. So like Bitcoin in itself was just always a block, and then all of a sudden, let me go back to my little thing here, that as soon as, I can't remember the block number. So imagine this Bitcoin just keeps going. All of a sudden, two people decide, a group decides, I want Bitcoin to look like this. I want the code itself to look like this. And these guys split off the chain and turn it into Bitcoin Cash. And there's a lot of money in it per se for some of these people, but that's why there's a lot of derivatives of Bitcoin. There's like Bitcoin
But these
Cash.
guys weren't like the original Bitcoin creators or anything. These are just like some random people who decided this?
Not necessarily random. They were very early on Bitcoin, so they had a lot of pull as far as
okay.
all this stuff. That's a weird subject to get into, but
Okay.
just know that any of these things they run off of kind of what I discussed, which is vague, but like I said, I'm not the computer expert and all that, but there's Bitcoin Diamond, Bitcoin Gold, Bitcoin, all this stuff. So people can move these chains off into their own thing. And if they want to continue running their computers to support that software, they can. Does that kind of make sense? It's really hard, but think of Bitcoin as just software. And if I want to change that software, I have to have, ownership share, which would be more than 51% of the hash rate of that chain to change the code itself, which is a weird thing even in my mind, but yeah.
Wow.
So learning all these intricacies, I wouldn't say learning them, but just reading until 3 a.m. some mornings there's a lot of stuff that once you get into it, you're like, oh, this is interesting. This is interesting. And
yeah, right. Like there's already a lot more to it than I expected.
it just keeps going.
Yeah.
But I think the intrinsic value that lies in it is it's capped. Obviously we just saw the Fed print trillions of dollars, out of thin air, which you can't do with this per se software, which unless, somebody attacks it, which I've had speculative thoughts, what if the Fed just prints all this money and shorts it into oblivion on the futures market, what kind of effect would that have? That's a thought that I've had, because everybody got super excited about Bitcoin futures on, I think it was the CME, whatever it was. And
I remember that. Yeah,
I was like, this is not going to be a good thing for the price of Bitcoin, because now you have people that probably have a lot more money than the people that have been involved with it, and now they have the ability to short it.
Right.
So
people are going to be looking to this to see like what Bitcoin should be doing, right?
Yeah, like all you got to do is look at when futures came out for Bitcoin, and it pretty much was the dead top day, at least week. So that was.
I didn't know this existed. I was going to ask you about like GBTC, but I forgot this was an option.
Yeah. Well, I don't trade futures, but GBTC was an interesting one too. Like I remember when it started its run up in like it had to have been later than this. I think it was probably early 2017, where all I did was search, and this is why I like, Thinkorswim, is all I did was search Bitcoin, and it gives you the listings. And the only time it was like BTSC and like one other strange one. But yeah, and then it was just GBTC. I was like, what's this? Like I didn't even know it existed prior to this. And it's done I think a 10-for-1 split at that point, because it was like 150.
I remember trading. I traded it a lot, like back when Bitcoin did the 19K run. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this was actually like 3,000 or something like that. I think it do it.
Yeah, it was crazy. You like had putting attack articles on it. It was a really fun trade.
Yeah, it was wild. $1,000 moves on some OTC stock back in the day was like, what is going on? But it's GBTC itself is. So I know for a fact that right now it's still it's got a premium to it, as far as like when you buy GBTC, you're buying Bitcoin, but you're buying it at a premium. And I think the current premium is like 6% or something like that. I haven't looked at it in a long time, but there's also now Ethereum, which you can buy, which is the grayscale Ethereum trust. So it's a whole nother one that I think is a little bit more useful than Bitcoin per se, going in the long run, because there's just runs off of different software. I
wanted to ask you about this also, because like, what's the difference? That's kind of one of my questions.
I would say, well, it's not necessarily a tough question, but think of it as, so Bitcoin itself is kind of, think of it as that data set, like, oh, I own one data set on this Excel spreadsheet kind of a thing. Let me clarify this, because Bitcoin actually goes down to like decimals, because you've seen it like 0.0000.
Yeah.
I think it's 18 decimals. I could be wrong on my shot there, but that's why you can buy $20 worth, because you'd get 0.0001.
Right. Yeah.
Thing. So my history on Ethereum, I wouldn't say it's fuzzy, but I remember back in, and this is my introduction to it, was I never even heard about it at this point, and I think it was right here. It's like October or September of 2016. I'm getting ready to go to a softball game, and I'm like, oh, I wonder what Bitcoin's at. I pull it up. I think it was like 600, 700, something like that. But I look at Coinbase. I'm like, what's this Ethereum? Like, I had no idea. I was like, but they have it, so I'm going to buy it. And so I buy some of it. I forget about it for, I remember the next day that I looked at it, it was like 56 or something like that, 59. It was like right in here. So like 50, 48, right in here. And I tweeted, and I was like, whoa, what is this? So then I start down that rabbit hole of what's Ethereum. And the best single sentence that I could say of what it is it's like programmable money. So, what does that mean? Think of it as I can create, and you could do this with Bitcoin, but it's a little bit more efficient with Ethereum as a smart contract. So think of like how labor intensive it is for a contract to be created, executed, upheld, all that stuff. So the creator, who is, you can look him up, his name is, he's alive, he's a really smart kid. I just blanked his name though. Vitalik. So he's a guy from Russia, Vitalik Buterin.
Okay.
But so he created it, and they did an ICO where you could send Bitcoin to an Ethereum address, and that whole process starts again where you have your private and public keys and all that stuff. And I wish I knew what started the run up early, from 50 cents to $12, but people saw the value in a contract, an electronic contract. And the best example that I still have to this day of is, flight insurance. It never really went anywhere, but the fact that you could say, I want to have 2-hour flight insurance on my upcoming flight. I got to pay for it a day ahead. With insurance contracts, once you actually go to collect, if the contract pays out, that's a long process. So if your flight is necessarily delayed, let me take a step back. If I pay $10 and I say, I think my flight's going to be delayed, I want to submit it, and you run it through this Ethereum program that they created, it would reference the flight data that actually happened that's like being recorded on databases. So if the flight was actually delayed, you would get immediate payment. And I don't know where it went and all that, but think of it more of as it's kind of like Bitcoin. I think its supply is a lot higher, so it's 110 million right now, and I believe there are 2 that are created every 2 minutes. Gosh, I could be totally off on that. Or it's 30 seconds. I haven't looked at it in a while, but it's the same like block reward structure. People mine it. And this is what people really started going after with their graphics cards like 2016, which I think is what really fueled the entire space, because then you had the whole ICOs. So all the mania that was caused in 2017, in my opinion, was all because of Ethereum. Because, and you can do it right now, like it's pretty interesting. You can, your own token, costs you like $30 in Ethereum, but I can essentially create my own Ethereum token and I can sell it to you. So you can see how a lot of scams got started quite easily. Build a website, say, oh, we got a token, buy it. It's going to be the next best thing. And that's where a lot of scams happened. And I think people were kind of realizing some of these high-level scams that were going on with some of these Ethereum, just brand new tokens created out of thin air. I think that's what really burst the bubble, is people probably got smoked on some of these and are like, whoa, I need to talk to my state senator. I just lost $10 million, that type of thing. But it's in and itself is like a smart contract platform. So if I want A and B to happen, and when it does, I send you money automatically, it's easily programmed in that.
So there's like more to some of this stuff than just like it's not hackable. Like it actually like helps solve some problems.
Yeah.
And one of the more efficient.
Yeah. Like one of the other interesting ones, which I've looked into it was probably a year ago. So Chainlink is an interesting one. I think Google started using it, which is why its value went from 40 cents to $4 in a short amount of time. So close that one. So like back in here, I remember looking at it. I was like, okay, what is this? Because a lot of people were talking about it. So its simplest form is it's data referencing. So it accumulates data across different platforms that are running on it. It's probably a bad explanation of it, but I wish I could go to their page that has it. So like if you have, and this kind of explains it a little bit better. So if you have like the price of Apple and all these different data sets, it can be extrapolated into this blockchain and produce like real world data. that actually has value. And there was an interesting paper, I think it was like a year ago that I read, that where Google was testing it as far as the usefulness of it. Vaguely, they essentially all it said was that it's pretty useful, and that's why it 10x'd in the matter of 2 months. I don't know a whole lot of people or what it's being used for currently at the moment, but it's an Ethereum token, which is when I write a contract to create these tokens, you can only make so many. Which is why, to me, always looking at, same as stocks, look at the circulating supply and the total supply. So I know in my head, 650 more of these tokens can be put on the market until they're all out. Does that make sense? I mean, obviously,
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
In the back of my head, I know that at any moment this could, they could release 50 million or whatever. Because I don't think I've read the white paper on this one as far as their structure that they allow to, but a lot of these legitimate ones that I perceive as legitimate, it's hard to do that in a brand new internet currency space. Yeah. But I try to find the ones that if I've used them and they actually provide some use, that is value. I'll bring up this one because it's another Ethereum token and I'm going to say it right now. Don't buy any of the stuff that I'm talking about if you're watching this podcast, because that's just plain insane. But it's like, this is a token exchanging one. So if I have Ethereum that I bought on Coinbase and I want to interact with a game that was built, I can go to this website and I can swap my Ethereum for this in-game currency that is used in this game. So think of it like Chuck E. Cheese tokens. Like, I can't go put my US dollars into the machines at Chuck E. Cheese. I got to go to the counter and I got to get my tokens.
So you have to have the tokens to play the game. Otherwise,
to interact with the game, because I could see feedback loops as far as, let's say a game gets really, like, let's say one of these, and none of them have yet, like, let's say one of these Ethereum games gets really popular and they've set a limited amount of their tokens that anybody can have, but the game is amazing. Kind of like V-Bucks and Fortnite, they don't actually have like a fixed supply type of thing, but you could see is you could trade the value of a game and the popularity of a game if it's got one of these tokens type of thing. So it creates a weird dynamic. I'm always curious to see, once a game actually comes out with it, a popular thing as far as with their token, what happens, because some people may hoard the tokens because they want to buy them. It's a weird thing that who knows if it'll just never come to fruition.
Right.
But
so, like, how many different coins or tokens are there? Like, are we talking like thousands of different things? And a lot of them are.
I think the last time I looked, there was like 1,500 different ones, but there could be unlimited. As
like, people can just keep making them.
You can just keep making them. So, like, just because I was really curious and I wanted to test these, like, I was like, well, what is the actual? How does this work? All this stuff. I created my own one. Like, I created a token because I wanted to see, how does this work? What's the process behind this? And I'm like, I'm not going to do anything with them, because I knew at that time, people are going to get nailed for this stuff because it's all unregulated. And if you're selling unregulated securities, feds are going to come knocking at your door. So I was like, well, I want to know, I wanted to kind of understand how it works, as far as what do I got to do to create my own token in case this becomes a thing, just to learn it. It's like a learning process. But there are thousands of these things. Most of them are all useless. Some of them have some value. A lot of them copied failed tech companies in 1999, 2000. And so a lot of those things that popped up during this period, I was like, that looks exactly like the thing from 1999, 2000. Totally avoid it. But there are some that I believe Digibyte's an interesting one. It runs, I believe don't quote me on this, especially if you're watching this on YouTube. I believe it runs the World of Warcraft currency, like the in-game currency for World of Warcraft. Could be wrong, but that's one of the things that I remember that this one specific token does. And as you can see, there's 21 billion of these ones. So,
wow.
But if like a certain game gets popular and they run off these currencies, the currency in and of itself is probably going to become more valuable because more people want to play the game. You got to buy the currency to play the game.
Mm-hmm, right.
But yeah, as far as,
but man, like if you have like all these companies that start doing this, or like all these games that start doing this with their own coins, doesn't that like do I really want to have to like own like 50 different coins to like conduct basic transactions like in my life?
Exactly, and that's one of the problems to me is like, okay, like it's really annoying, and there's a great, somebody made it, I'll have to send it to you, or I could see if I can find it on YouTube. I'll search while I'm talking, but this guy made a video of a lemonade stand where you had to, in order to buy his lemonade, which I think he had on the sign, world's best lemonade, the only way to buy it was you had to buy his token. And he's like, the guy comes up with like cash, and he's like, I have this, will you take it? He's like, nope. And so it was a really funny joke where, I got to go to this currency, I got to give this guy my passport number, my social security, my address, just so I can buy the token, then come back to the stand and buy your lemonade. Yes. And that's kind of how it was if I wanted to interact with any of these things, I'd had to go to Coinbase, create an account, send it to the other exchange, which in and of itself, by sending the asset, so like when I send like a Bitcoin, that improves what the miners make. So the more the miners are making.
Yeah, actually, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you on that really quick because I had a question about this when you said that earlier. So if you send me a Bitcoin, first of all, is there a fee on that?
It's usually super small. So it all depends on a thing called the meme pool, which is, you're like, what the fuck is that? I hope that doesn't actually go to the website because I don't think that is the website. What it is essentially a pool of transactions that are being sent. So if there's a backlog, like if everybody's trying to send Bitcoin all at the same time, there's just this giant backlog, and you can set the upper limits of what you would want to pay for that transaction to be mined faster. So like, let's say I want to send you $100 in Bitcoin, and I say the max that I'll pay for this transaction is $1, which would be a lot for sending $100. Miners are going to say, well, they're not going to say it, but the program that the miners are running will say, I want to mine the transactions that have the best profitability. So if I try to send you $100 and I say I'll pay up to $1 in fee, where there's other guys that are saying I'll pay 5 cents, my transaction is going to go to you first, and theirs is going to be stuck waiting until this pool of transactions gets lower and lower and lower. So that's kind of what happened. In
like, you're talking about miners and how like even once all the Bitcoin is mined, they would still get like, they'd still be able to make some money from the blocks that go through.
Yeah,
that's from that stuff.
Yeah, so sometimes, just from my understanding, the more transactions are going through. So if everybody's using Bitcoin, they're all sending all at once, it's going to slow down being able to get your transaction in there because there's I think the limit is 2 megabytes of data. So there's a data limit on how much information can go into each block. So it can't all just be at once. So if the data that goes into a block, which is like, I think it's 2 megabytes, and those transactions that are included are going to be the ones that usually have the highest fee that sender is allowing. Does that make sense? So if there's 20 people and I say I'll pay $1 for mine to be transacted, when the other 19 people are like, I'll pay a penny, mine is going to get put in that block before everybody else's. So my transaction will be sent faster.
So and then this leads into another question, like, why wouldn't I just send you $100 on Venmo for free? Like, and why is it better to do $100 of Bitcoin? Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's not for a U.S. person.
Okay.
So, and that's also a great point. Like, why would anybody in the U.S. use this service? Number one, it's hard to use. I have U.S. dollars. I think we're just very fortunate in what we have as far as money.
Okay.
yeah, they can print it, but if you're somebody, and maybe you read the things or not, but like in Venezuela, and it's kind of why I see the Fed just creating $2 trillion out of thin air. Over time, that will probably make Bitcoin just worth more because of simple economics. But there's an interesting story where happened in, I think it was like 2016, 2017, where Venezuela's dollar, whatever their currency is, I think it went over, I think it was 1,000,000% in inflation. So like that's essentially like the problem that can be occurred is if there's too much money out there and everybody's a millionaire, is everybody really a millionaire?
Yeah, right, yeah.
So then it all kind of circles back to, well, why is the US dollar worth what it is? Great point that I believed even before it was on Billions was, well, we have essentially the biggest and most powerful technology and army in the world. So until that's something that is not the case, the US dollar is still going to be worth as much as it is, which is why I would send you $100 on Venmo and not Bitcoin.
Yeah, right, okay.
So that kind of, to me, answers that question is you have to know why the US dollar is worth what it is versus, other things.
Okay.
But I would send you money on Venmo. But if I was an immigrant and my family still lived in Venezuela, obviously there's a whole lot of other things that go on. But I would probably still send them US dollars if they could download Venmo. If they couldn't, I'd probably send them Bitcoin if that was a thing. So there's a whole lot of speculative questions that can be raised by it, but the only reason I like it is the simplicity of the math and how it functions. But yeah.
So if you were to like own Bitcoin or Ethereum or one of the ones you think is more legitimate, like longer term, what would you think the main major risks are like in the future with it? Like government saying like this is not okay. Like I don't really know.
I think that's probably a big one. So the only way that I can answer that is I have to use what I know, which is what's happened in past history.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it was 1930. I think it was the 30s. I can't quote my exact dates because I'm not looking at it, but all you have to do is Google when the United States made it illegal to own gold. So there was a certain point that you had to turn in your gold to banks and get money because the government essentially barred people from owning physical gold. So do I think that there's a possibility that they could one day just say, if you hold Bitcoin, it's illegal? Yeah.
Or like you can't do any Bitcoin transactions in the U.S. or something like that?
Yeah. And
did a couple of countries do that a few years ago? I feel like I remember hearing about that, but I can't remember.
I think so. I think China's always wishy-washy, but there's other questions that can be raised by if they do that, and I don't think that they technically legally can, based off of the Constitution. So that was a whole nother thing that I read into. I was like, well, in a weird way, the Bitcoin blockchain is just a form of, I'm not getting political, but it's a form of freedom of speech in a weird, askew way. But who knows what they could do? Who knows? As far as our president right now, he could do just about whatever, and I wouldn't surprise me. But if that necessarily happened, do I think miners across the world would turn off their computers? Probably not. I think the price would just get demolished, but there's interesting points that if the profitability drops so low, which is why I think an attack on Bitcoin necessarily wouldn't come like that. It would just come from an oblivion of fake shorting through futures, that it would drive the price so low that no miner could, it costs money to run these machines. So if the reward for a Bitcoin drops to way below what I'm spending to operate my machine, I just turn them off. So if all these miners turn off, It just
I
cascades.
think I'm a little fuzzy on this point still, though. Like, why are the miners necessary? Like, why do we need them? Like, if people have Bitcoin and believe, like, hey, this is unhackable, like, why? I don't really see the necessity.
Of miners? Well, the miners are essentially a network. So the easiest way to think of is to take this all the way back to when Bitcoin was created. The software itself is, because it's all it is software. You could use your CPU, which is just your central processing unit, before they figured out GPUs could solve this math problem harder. So when you downloaded this software back in like 2010, which I did because it's on one of my computers that's sitting in my closet over here, you could download the software and you could just let your computer sit there overnight and run this program and be rewarded for Bitcoins. You're like, you don't know what this really is, but all it is you're running software that once you download it and install it, it functions. Just like any program that you would have like a game on. What it reminded me of was this old program, and I think they just shut it down like last year, was SETI program. So when I was in high school, I think I was a freshman, you could download this software on your computer that would give your computer your computing power, which is the same, to me it's like a mirror exact thing. You could give your computing power to this network that would search for extraterrestrial life. And it's kind of the same concept with what Bitcoin is and was, that if I just let my computer stay running at night, it assists in this network. And so then you just have those dynamics of, well, if I have a faster computer and I have more computers, where do I want to direct this space? Do I just want to turn off my computer and, leave it turned off? Or do I want to use that power that I'm going to pay for and earn these rewards from these blocks of Bitcoin? Is that does that kind of make sense? Because it's really abstract, but if you think about it, it's just software that's running on computers that solve a math problem. So if I turn off, miners I think that they've been called that because it's an easy term to call them, but all it is just somebody with a lot of computers just running one program that they choose to run. If I had a Bitcoin mine, which is just a ton of computers and a ton of ANT miners and GPUs, and all of a sudden it's more profitable to me to power the United States blockchain of US dollars because they're going to pay me more, I'm going to probably switch all of my computing power to this. So that's a possibility too, is that, miners in China say, well, if the Chinese government's going to give me a fixed rate based off of, whatever I supply in hashing power or just, computer programming or computer power, is it more worth it to just run their blockchain? That's a possibility too. So
what day did you say it got cut in half, the reward, from 12.5 to 6.25?
Yesterday.
Yesterday, okay. And was yesterday the day it tanked, or was that 2 days ago?
I think it was. So it still runs off of, to me, as far as it's similar to stocks. It was a buy the run up into the news event.
What was that? The halving thing? Was that basically like a reverse split? I think I saw someone say. Does that accurately describe it?
Not really. It's just a because, like we said before, there's only 21 million Bitcoins.
Right.
But the halving was just everybody who's still running that same program now gets 50%.
Oh, that's the halving. Okay, yeah, okay.
You just get 50% less reward. There's not like less Bitcoin out there. It's just the reward for solving these problems is now cut in half.
So it's going to be really interesting when it gets to that 21 million then.
Yeah, and I'm curious. I mean, we'll be dead by then, but
oh, it'll take that long.
I think it will take up until 21 something. I can't remember the exact date, but it takes a long time.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I was thinking it would be like a few-year thing. Okay.
Long time. Like I think we'd probably be long dead before it ever hits that point, but I could be wrong. I just know that it takes years for it to hit that point, because it'll go down all the way to like one.
More of it. Yeah.
So it's a weird subject. I treat it as, you said it at the beginning, it's kind of like a trading vehicle at this point.
Yeah.
But I think that there will probably be, and I think it'll be more or less related to one of these other tokens, which is why I'm still interested in, like, I still watch what Kodak does with their Kodak coin and their platform, because
that's right.
I see what Google has been doing recently. So like a lot of it comes down to just coding and knowing what to do. Like I tried to take a screenshot of a movie that I bought on Google Play, and I've always been able to just take screenshots, but recently they've updated their code that it will recognize if I take a screenshot or a snipping tool to try and take a picture of it, and it'll just give me a black screen.
Really? Wow.
So, you know, computers are all run just by humans. So when humans figure out that, hey, we can do this with this, you know, coding, let's do it. They can do that. So like right here, I have it on my screen. I wonder if you'll be able to see it. So I'm going to take a screenshot of Top Gun, and I'll put it on. So I can see it on my screen right now, but that's what it looks like when I go to take a screenshot. But on my screen to the right, and I know that the webinar software blocks it out too, because when we did that COVID webinar, I tried to do a video, and it just had a black screen on the thing. But like to my right, I can actually see the Top Gun movie and the screen that it's on. It's kind of interesting. Off its topic, but
wow.
Crypto in itself is a very interesting subject. I think that regulation will play interesting parts. I think there was a news article today that came out that the guy that, I think it was 2013, the guy that started what's called the BIT license. So in order to operate a crypto company in New York, you need to get a BIT license. So the lawyer that created this whole thing while he was in office, as soon as it became law, he left office, started his own business, and today he just got approved. He just raised like $140 million for his Bitcoin thing because he could get one of these licenses that are almost impossible to get. And so it's a very interesting space. But that's kind of why everybody goes back and says Bitcoin's the only thing that matters. Whether I believe that or not, I think Ethereum is an interesting thing, but times have changed. Nobody per se cares a whole lot about this, which is probably the best time to do one of these, is because,
right, yeah,
you know, buy it when nobody cares. That's my rule of thumb.
Yeah, well, and then also like just, you know, even if I just approach it in terms of like, you know, a trading vehicle, like they're so technically pure. It's crazy.
Oh, they are some of the purest charts ever. So like it's kind of mind-boggling how well they trade to me like really slow OTC stocks. Especially during this run.
I'll pull up a Bitcoin chart like every week or so and just like look at the chart, and that's like about my extent of Bitcoin knowledge. But like it's, man.
Yeah. And they're just it's perfect. It's perfect human emotions in a chart. But like I remember I was tweeting like mad, like NASDAQs are a little bit tougher to see when those turns happen. OTCs are, for me, generally pretty easy now. But like when it was crypto, it was like, sell it. Like the turns were so obvious and the bottoms were so obvious because it was just that slow, here it comes, you know.
Are you using Coinbase for everything?
Yeah. Like there, I have like an account. Oh, sorry, what was that?
I said, are there any others, or is that really like the one to like?
There was
not a recommendation. Opinion.
So in the crazy times there was, let me spell it right, Binance, which they now have their own Binance US, so you can only buy specific ones on the US Binance. But it became popular really based off of timing and their affiliate program that they had. So if I was trading there and I signed you up, I'd get 50% of your commissions as you trade. So you can see how quick that this got popular. Everybody's like, oh, I trade here. Take my link. I get 50%. Everything that you trade. So
our commission's high.
They do it In my opinion, they're crazy high. Let me see if there is. I don't want to log into my account while I'm on here, but let me see if I show it. Yeah, there we go. So I think there's their fee structure. So like the first trade that you make with Coinbase is kind of ridiculous. So like if you made a $10,000 order, you would pay 0.5%. So
Wow.
to buy and sell, like if I bought 10,000 worth and I sold it, it's $100 right off the bat. And I think that's one of the big things. Like, why would my thing is like, why would anybody trade crypto actively right now when you could trade stocks commission free?
Yeah, right. Is it all like web-based trading, or is there like a downloadable platform type, like type deal or something, you know?
Binance has one. Coinbase has a trading app, which is worse than the web-based thing. So like if you trade on, so there's Coinbase itself. There's Coinbase Pro. Let me see if I can pull these up without being logged into them. There we go. Okay. So there's regular Coinbase where it's just the normal average Joe who's like, oh, I want to own Bitcoin. You can just sign up for Coinbase, buy it, done. And then it's theirs, but then there's Coinbase Pro, which is their trading platform. So you can download like their apps. Their apps are worse than if you just go to their. So when you create this, it's all web-based. So you just go to it's like kind of like TradingView, but you have a portal and you just trade right off of your browser. Or you can download the app, which is actually, I've heard worse. I downloaded it and I immediately took it off.
One thing I remember hearing a lot of is like horror stories of people like getting stuck in trades. Is that mainly just like the liquid crazy cryptos, or like does that happen a lot with Bitcoin and stuff like that too even?
As far as when you say stuck in trades,
like, you know, like, okay, like I got a stop loss in and Bitcoin starts to and, you know, like now you're stuck with all these other stop losses type deals. Sort of like trying to sell an OTC into weakness, I guess.
Kind of, yeah. But like there's one website that I think it's BitMEX. So they don't allow U.S. people. And if you have one, like there was a thing where a guy he was in the U.S. He was using this BitMEX account. Then he's not allowed to because he's not in the jurisdiction that they allow. They took his account away. But they offer, last time I looked, 100-to-1 leverage.
Whew.
So a lot of people just lose everything they had, which is stupid. But as far as like stuck in trades, I haven't really seen a whole lot of people per se get stuck in them.
What about like your personal experiences? You've never really gotten into a situation where
nope,
you're not getting out where you should type of deal?
Nope.
That's good.
They usually get out before you.
I was under the impression it was like Wild West out there. Like, you know, you're lucky if your area gets filled.
It was really wild. So there was, let me see if I can find a video of this. So there was one, and I was here for it, and I watched it as it actually happened, but there was a flash crash on Ethereum, which brought it from 320 down to 10 cents in a matter of, you know, split second. And that was an interesting moment because I actually, like, I saw it happen, and I was like, whoa, like, what was that? And so just like any stock that I would do, I put out prayer orders. I was like, well, maybe it'll do it again the next minute. So I put out orders at like 150, 100, and actually got filled on some of these orders that were like way down here on that trade. And that was a pretty ridiculous trade. But it was an interesting moment. But other than that, I haven't seen a whole lot of crazy things other than if you're on these like weird 100-to-1 leveraged websites that you probably shouldn't be on in the first place.
Right.
You know,
I mean, it's 24/7, but like if you're holding something overnight, are you even using like hard stops, or are you not really worrying about it? You're not
Yeah, like I'll sometimes set a hard stop and I'll be like, you know, whatever. But if I remember this period of time where it was like, it's 4 a.m., maybe I should go to bed. But as far as bad executions, no. The liquidity books on all, like Coinbase Pro has gotten so much better.
It's a lot closer to like trying to trade an NASDAQ than an OTC.
Yeah.
It's kind of, okay, that's good.
Yeah. So I mean, it's worthwhile because some of the moves that are out there are crazy. Like I don't trade it even as actively because it's not, it doesn't have the feeling that it does as far as market participants right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I was sitting at my computer when it did the 8,000 to 4,000 day. So that was when the market was just crashing, which was also in of itself an amazing topic to cover because everybody said when the market crashes, Bitcoin will go up.
Yeah,
that was one of the things. I was like, it pretty much failed that test because humans are going to do what humans do, and panic is panic. Doesn't matter what market you're in. So I got lucky and I bought it at I think it was like 4,020.
Wow.
And sold it about 15 minutes later at 5,700. So that was that was an interesting trade. But as far as getting into it, it's pretty easy. I know that they have limits like that, but I think for most people that don't necessarily do it, it'll be really interesting, and I think it might take 10 years. I think a lot of brokerages are going to just offer, because to me, the technology to do it isn't per se too hard. It's just a matter of regulation that Coinbase necessarily won't be worth what it is today in 10 years. I think you'll be able to, in one form or another way, trade all of the decent ones through E-Trade, TD Ameritrade. It may take a long time though. You just got to see who the players are as far as, who's in control of what ruling and all that stuff politically, which I don't pay attention to. But I foresee it being something that you could trade all these things, on your normal brokerage account.
I know it
exists, but yeah, not fully.
Yeah. And then if I buy a Bitcoin in Coinbase, is that where I would send a Bitcoin to someone if I wanted to pay them in Bitcoin, or do I do that somewhere else?
Yep, you could do that. So they have, I'm not, nobody really knows all their security measures, but they have an insurance fund. So if you get hacked, you technically get your money back. And if they got hacked, you would get money in US dollars back of whatever the value was. So there's that. So you're not necessarily taking as big of a risk buying it as you would, 7 years ago on websites that aren't credible and aren't regulated and all that stuff. So
can you buy Bitcoin in US dollars and sell it into another currency
from Bitcoin?
From Coinbase. From Bitcoin, yeah.
You technically could, but I know that on Coinbase Pro, they have British pound order books. It's right here, but if you're not in that jurisdiction, they don't let you trade in that.
Okay, gotcha.
But I think on so there's one website that's called. The only reason I saw this was because I found Brave, and that's a whole story that I won't even necessarily go into. I just like browsers that are the fastest.
It's a great browser. I love it. I love Brave.
Yeah, it's the only reason I wanted it was because I had that whole Google moment where I bought the they're sitting in my closet. Here, I'll even grab them. Because I have 3 of them. Where I bought these things. The Google Homes.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
And then I go, they're probably listening to everything I say. This kind of freaks me out. And so I unplugged them. And then that's kind of was there's a privacy browser, blah, 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 all that stuff. But to me, it's just faster. I like faster.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But on this website, you actually can trade. You can put it in a bunch of different currencies if they would allow me. But you can buy gold. So it's kind of an interesting thing as far as what they offer. And these guys are actually based in, I want to say Mesa. So an hour from me.
Wow.
Is their headquarters. So that's kind of cool.
That's awesome.
But got any last questions? What is it? It's been an hour. Oh,
it's spinning, man. That's a lot of information.
We could always do series 2.
I feel pretty good. I feel like we touched on most things I was curious about.
Yeah, because believe me, we didn't even touch on privacy things privacy token, because there's privacy tokens.
Oh, I'm sure there's so many kinds of tokens and coins out there that. Oh.
I would guess that if people like this, we could do another one, because you could, because it's such a foreign new thing, you could go on and talk about it forever. But there's a lot of interesting things as far as what could happen. Still waiting for the day where, you know, somebody buys out a crypto, you know, company that runs off of it. Because you can go to, there's some websites where you can book travel on. I think it's, so it's kind of like a blockchain, or it's a, yeah, let's say a blockchain-based price line. So,
but it's got to be like, so I can't go there and book in US dollars?
You can. Actually.
Oh, you can. Okay. They will give you the option. Okay.
Yeah. So but the interesting thing about this one, I guess maybe it's kind of a cool one to maybe end on, but if I wanted to book with this company, this is where that token economics comes in. If I buy their token off of an exchange, which I don't even know which one they're on anymore, technically I get a discount on their website if I pay in their token versus the US dollar.
Okay.
So how that all works out in the long run is an interesting thing, but we'll see. I don't know. It takes to me, we're in, everybody always asks this question, is what era are we in of Bitcoin? First inning, second inning, all that stuff. I kind of consider it to be the release of HTML. If that resonates with anybody, because I remember I built my first website when I was 9 with HTML. It's you'd type in the code and you'd reference, a picture or a cat or all this stuff back in, God, what was that, 1994? I think that's kind of the era that we're in as far as with this stuff. It's all relatively so new. You can now send money to a domain name. So if I buy a domain name, let's say I want to send Tim Bitcoin, I don't have to have your address that I have to make sure I don't type wrong or screenshot it or this. I could just go, I want to send 100 Bitcoin to tim.grittani, send. And
okay.
Gets it to you. So somebody just created that technology behind that. So
cool. So there's going to be a lot more innovative stuff coming out.
And I think that is. I think with the mining thing, we're at a stone wall. So that, I think we'll churn around this area, from 13,000 to probably intrinsic value is 4,200 for one Bitcoin. So that's the cost of electricity, mining, everything that's put into it.
Okay.
I think we'll bounce around this area for a couple more years. And all you got to do to figure that out is just look at what it did in this area and then expand it out by twice as much. Because we're probably right around here in this area. But I'll end it with it.
Yes, you do think you do have a bullish long-term perspective then on these things. You think Bitcoin's high is not in yet.
Yeah, no. I think there's two scenarios. I think it's worth more than $1 million, or I think it's worth nothing. To me, it's one or the other. But I'll end it kind of with this. So it was during the run. I was really curious. It's well, what does NASDAQ do? What do tech stocks do? So I took a screenshot of the current market, and after the bubble I considered popped, I was well, what does it look like against the NASDAQ? And I was that's pretty much the exact same move, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm well, I'm curious to see what happens, and I think I just posted an updated one of that exact chart here, and it's pretty interesting as far as how exact that kind of turned out to be. Obviously, right in here it's not the same, but that big drop, I think I wrote that there would be something that happens. I thought it would be on the political side as far as, a law, but I figured that we'd get this type of move on some event that we didn't know that was necessarily happening. So that was interesting to see that the virus did that. Kind of crazy. But anyways, I think
it'll be really interesting to watch it play out over the next few years. and
But
beyond.
it was really funny. I was like, I think there's just going to be some massive fear from something unforeseen. I thought it would be regulatory, but it turned out to be the
Yeah,
virus
right.
that did that crazy down move.
Yeah.
But
Not something you'd see coming, but
yeah, but I felt it in my gut that we might have something that would just pull the chart out of nowhere back to like its lows.
yeah.
Let me see if there's one question, because I did promise one question.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Or a few. Let's see which one we want. There's Nate's. Do you know the story behind that?
I don't know the story, but I see you guys tweet it all the time. I don't know the story.
So I always say some dumb stuff on Twitter, and then Nate posts that meme. And so I decided that I would send it. I take a screenshot of it and I send it to him in a shirt. So I printed it out on a T-shirt and mailed it to him.
Oh, that's the shirt.
I was like, if you want to make it really fun, just post the screenshot and then, I'll take a picture of mine. So I don't know if you saw those or not, but we posted.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't connect those, but yeah.
Posted those funny things. And I want to try and get Ryan Reynolds to finish it at the end doing his thing. I'll let you pick the question.
Oh, okay. I gotta lean in here.
So there's two right here. When did you start?
Ooh, I like that one. If we started trading chat rooms and we're degenerates.
I'll let you go first.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I did get my start in chat rooms, and I was absolutely a degenerate. I came in as, I wanted to learn, I wanted to study and all that, but like, I also wanted to make money now. And so like, I was the follow the alert guy. I was like, okay, I'm going to try to learn in the meantime, but like, I'm going to follow every buy alert I see because like, that'll make me some quick cash. And like, I was like obsessive over it. I made a spreadsheet like tracking like the gurus' past trades and like, okay, they made 4% on this and 6% on this and lost 2% on this. And like, if I had $1,000 account and just went all in every time, how fast would I make 10 grand? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Full blown degenerate, full blown.
Well, I remember APS days, and somebody wouldn't even have a clue what we're talking about right now. But dude, I remember those. You had to be first within like 10 seconds of that email, or you'd be paying 50% higher.
Well, but man, yeah, that's the thing though. Like they had that volatility at least.
Oh yeah.
Like, man,
it was insane. VLNX, I think, was their last one that they had. I pretty much started. God, what did I do? I remember working at a hotel, and I said, all right, I want to get into trading because they had just stopped online poker. I was like, all right, what stocks? I knew gold, kind of. And I was like, well, maybe I'll buy some gold stocks. And traded a few gold stocks that were like 000 things. And I was like, I don't got that much money. I got to make some off my $1,000 that I have. And I think I ended up losing all of it. And the next one I bought it was actually a promoted stock. It was like 320, but the chart was like this. I was like, oh, it's got to go higher. Lost 50% one day. Had no idea. But then I did the chat rooms, and I found Nate, and I did Tim's as well for a short period of time. But yeah, other than that, it's always been I don't want to have a boss and do my own thing. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I identify with that for sure.
Yeah.
So then it's like the other half of that with the, learning discipline. For you, like, was there any like aha discipline moment? I think for me, it was just, took enough losses, saw that I was kind of out of control with what I was trying to do, and then just kind of focused on what I had seen success with.
Yeah, that makes sense. For me, discipline was probably, I don't know, I had years of playing poker, so that was kind of just, what am I doing? I have no idea what I'm doing. So it was more for me figuring out, and risk is always important. If I'm losing within like minutes, I'll be like, I'll take a trade off. Like I can put it back on later, especially now that commissions are free. It's like, all right, patience is that much easier. But anyways, I think we'll call it. It's been an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, that was awesome, man.
So thanks for everybody for watching.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time, Cody. I appreciate it.
You guys like it, and Tim and I want to do it again. Maybe we'll have another one and do crypto version 2 or whatever topic at some point.
Sounds good.
All right.